thing I never told you guys about was my father. I didn't tell you a lot about him. Um, he was my first parent to pass. And for many years, he worked at a place called the Bud Company. And when my father got into his 70s, he had cancer. Now, my father did not smoke or do anything that was harmful to himself during that time. And he ended up getting cancer of the pancreas, and we just couldn't figure out where it came from, how he got it. It wasn't until after he was gone I started to piece things together. The building that my father worked in, I'm going to show you what the Bud Company used to look like. Back in its heyday, this is what the plant used to look like when my father was working there. It was a rail plant, and they used to do auto parts, and the trains would roll up. And my father used to work on a forklift, so he would actually be out on this part where the rail trains would come in, and the forklift operators would just load up the trains with all of the auto parts. Now, back in the day, they used to make the Cougar, and the Ford vans used to also come out of this plant back in the day. And then they stopped building any kind of vehicles out of there, and they started to just do auto parts. But this is what it looked like back in the day. Man, it don't look like that anymore. Let me see here. I'm going to show you what it looks like today. It is hard to see. It is an eyesore. This plant was where everybody and their mom worked in Philadelphia back in the day. And there were some pretty big companies in the city during that time. You had the Bud Company, and directly across the street from this plant was Tasty Cake. Tasty Cake is actually still there, and they still make the Tasty Cakes that go out all over the country and are sold. And this was on Huntington Park Avenue, y'all. And as soon as you turned on Huntington Park Avenue, you would always know you were there. The entire block would smell like Tasty Cakes. And it still does. It still does when you go over there. But this is what the Bud Company looks like now. It's completely abandoned. The jobs have left the city of Philadelphia. A lot of people bought their homes, put their children through college, and retired from working here at the Bud Company. A lot of people did, including myself. I didn't work there, but my father was there for 32 years. My brother also worked there for 11 years. So, this place, has part of my family history there. But it's abandoned, and the jobs are now relocated into Mexico. That's where they went. So this building has literally sat there for about 2 decades, unused. So, of course, you see time definitely is showing in all the wear and tear and the graffiti and everything. And people have gone in there, and graffiti is all on the inside as well. But this is still sitting there in North Philadelphia. So getting back to the cancer. When my father was alive, and I remember the day that he had to tell me that he had cancer, and he broke down and cried in front of me, and I ended up crying, and we're just bawling and crying in front of each other. And we couldn't figure out where it came from. And it gets even deeper than that. Years later, my mother had developed breast cancer. And again, my mother didn't smoke, rarely drunk. She didn't do anything to bring all of the cancer exposure to herself. Come to find out, this Bud Company plant, y'all, was a building that was loaded in asbestos. They use asbestos all through the plant when it was built. So my father would have work clothes and my mom would wash his work clothes. So all of those asbestos particles would end up on his clothes. And then when my mom put it in the laundry, it transferred to her. And people don't think about that kind of stuff when your family members have cancer. It was like, okay, I get where he got it from. He got it from working in a building that was loaded in asbestos. But how did my mother get it? But I remember he used to always wear separate work clothes. And then he would bring his work clothes home at the end of the week, and my mom would just throw everything in the laundry. And she got her exposure to it that way, just touching and handling the clothes. But of course, it wasn't until years later when I was able to piece this together. And the reason why I was able to piece it together, y'all, is because when I found out this building was considered high in asbestos in the city of Philadelphia, I went and started doing research. And I found a laundry list of people that worked in this same plant, y'all. They had lung cancer, throat cancer, breast cancer, just like my father, cancer of the pancreas. It was every single cancer you can imagine these workers had. Every single cancer you could imagine. Men and women that worked in the plant. I couldn't believe how long the list was of employees with cancer. It blew me away. It blew me away. I was glad that I found out where it came from. But ladies and gentlemen, by the time I found out, the statute of limitation had ran out for me to sue. And it wasn't entirely my fault. I was trying to get my father's biopsy, and the place that did his biopsy tried to claim to me that no biopsy was done, but I know a biopsy was done. And they kept telling me this for 2 years. And I kept telling them no, because I remember my father telling me he got the biopsy done. It wasn't until 2 years later that somebody finally found my father's biopsy. And see, this just go to show you, these hospital records, they keep so many records. Records get lost, they get misplaced. And the sad part is I even tried to go to the doctor and he was like, no, I don't see anything here. And that's how pretty much I got screwed over. So they did find the biopsy, but by the time they found it, the time for me to sue had ran out. I was pissed, but nevertheless, at least I know where the asbestos come from. So this is what I'm pretty much saying to all of you. Make sure you check out, especially these old manufacturer buildings and these old factory buildings. Make sure you study and research what levels of asbestos are in those buildings, because especially the old buildings that are sitting, it was a very common thing for asbestos to be used when these buildings were put up, during construction. They did not know that there was a problem, which I don't buy. They're claiming, when the buildings went up, they did not think asbestos was a problem, but I'm not fully buying that, y'all. This country has a tendency of hiding a lot of things, and then you find these things out later. But if you do find out someone in your family has worked in buildings and, for years and years and years, and they're showing signs of cancer, make sure you try to track where the cancer might have come from, because you have the right to sue and do something about it. So the moral of my story is, if your parents are showing signs or anybody in your family are showing signs of cancer, make sure you try to find out the history of places they've been, places they worked, so you can pinpoint where it possibly came from. So that's all I wanted to say. We all live and learn. Life is a learning experience. But please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell. And I will see you guys on the next video. Peace, family.